else here?
Just one last mic check for FCC TV. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
The mics were not in the right spot.
Good evening.
Madam Clerk,
Yes,
could someone help me get online, please?
certainly.
Thank you.
Alrighty, good evening. Welcome to the Monday, September 9th meeting of the Falls Church City Council. I wanted to call the meeting to order. We start with roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Ms. Conley?
Here.
Ms. Flynn?
Here.
Ms. Shantz Hiscott?
Here.
Mr. Snyder?
Here.
Ms. Underhill?
Here.
And Mayor Hardy?
Here.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you all. Why don't you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Do we have a motion to adopt tonight's meeting agenda, please?
I move to adopt tonight's meeting agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any noes? Alrighty, meeting's adopted. We have a number of special proclamations and guests with us tonight. Welcome, everybody. First up is the proclamation declaring September 17th through 23rd, 2024 as Constitution Week in the City of Falls Church. And Mr. Snyder will do the honors.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Whereas September 17, 2024 marks the 237th anniversary of the framing of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention, and whereas the Constitution is a bedrock built upon to make the nation more equal, more just, and more prosperous for all people, and whereas the framers of the Constitution understood the extraordinary promise of a democratic system of government, a notion that could be made a more perfect union by each passing generation to come. And whereas in 1952, Congress authorized the President of the United States of America to designate September 17 through 23 each year as Constitution Week, and to issue annually a proclamation inviting the people of the United States to observe such week with appropriate ceremonies and activities. Whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to the anniversary of this exceptional document and to the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate it. And
Now, therefore, I, Letty Hardy, Mayor of the City of Falls Church, Virginia, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week in the City of Falls Church, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through this guardian of our liberties. And I believe we have the Daughters of American Revolution here in the audience to accept the proclamation. Why don't you come on up? Thank you for joining us tonight. Would you like to say a few words, or you're... Thank you. Up next is our proclamation declaring September 13th through 22nd as Welcoming Week in the City of Falls Church, and Vice Mayor Sean Tiscott will read this.
Thank you. Whereas the first sentence of the city's vision for the community in the 2040 describes Falls Church as a welcoming and inclusive community, and whereas a welcoming culture can distinguish the city, attracting new neighbors, including immigrants and refugees, increasing our sense of belonging, contributing to a sense of purpose at a time of division, and becoming a hallmark of what makes Falls Church a special place in the heart of Northern Virginia. And whereas a welcoming environment also enhances the economic dynamism, global competitiveness, and overall prosperity of the city and larger region. And whereas immigrants and refugees are a vital part of our community, enriching our culture, bringing fresh perspectives and new ideas, starting businesses, and fueling the economy, and contributing to the vibrant diversity that our city values. And whereas city residents have been inspired by Welcoming America to create Welcoming Falls Church, a nonprofit civic organization part of a national movement that encourages hospitality to immigrants and refugees in communities around the country. And whereas Welcoming Falls Church has partnered with the Falls Church City Public Schools to launch an adult and family literacy center that teaches English to adults and provides childcare with a literacy focus in classes at Oak Street Elementary School. And whereas Welcoming Falls Church has championed a Renting to Refugees initiative, an innovative public-private partnership that addresses the shortage of affordable housing in the city, in which, with the support of City Council, has welcomed 5 refugee families to the city in its pilot phase. And whereas Welcoming Falls Church endeavors to engage all residents of the City of Falls Church through additional initiatives designed to build community and encourage a more welcoming environment in the city. And whereas a participant in Welcoming Week, the Falls Church community will join over 500 towns, cities, and counties around the country that will organize activities related to welcoming in their communities during that week. And whereas the city supports initiatives designed to develop a more welcoming community.
Now therefore, I, Letty Hardy, Mayor of the City of Falls Church, Virginia, do hereby designate the week of September 13th through 22nd, 2024 as Welcoming Week in the City of Falls Church, and encourage community members to observe this week by participating in activities that make the City of Falls Church a welcoming and inclusive community, not only during Welcome Week, but throughout the year. Thank you all. I think we have Welcoming Falls Church in the audience to come receive the proclamation. You're also welcome to make some comments if you'd like to. Come on up.
There's a lot of welcoming happening. My name's Christine Buckholtz, and I just wanted to thank the city for its commitment to creating a welcoming and inclusive community here in Falls Church City. And we also want to just acknowledge Hispanic Heritage Month that will be coming up as well. This year, for Welcoming Week, one of the anchors of our celebration will be an author visit with Cynthia Banhu. She's a professor at Oregon State University and previously a reporter for the Washington Post and the New York Times. And she's the author of Seeking Fortune Elsewhere, which are 8 short stories about the South Asian immigrant experience and their families. She'll be speaking to our students at Meridian High School on Friday in partnership with the Meridian High School Club, and we have a couple of representatives here from the school. And then she'll be doing 2 public events September 14th on Saturday morning at 9:30 at the high school and 2 p.m. at Mary Riley Stiles Library. And it is with the support of the Arts and Humanities Committee as well as Falls Church City Schools and the Education Foundation that made it possible for us to bring Cynthia Banhu here. And so we'd love for you all to join us at one of our public events, and we particularly want to thank Kat Abbott, who has been instrumental in organizing this event. And then, as we've mentioned before, the Adult and Family Literacy Center is an ongoing way that we welcome immigrants into our community. And as of last week, we've registered 65 students across 3 levels of English. And if it's anything like last year, we'll have students coming from 17 different countries: Afghanistan, Bolivia, Colombia, China, El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, Chile, India, Venezuela, Lithuania, Mexico, Ukraine, Morocco, the Dominican Republic, Russia, and Canada. And I want to thank Ann Niederpreem and Maria Marcus, who are here, for all of their efforts in leading the Adult and Family Literacy Center. We couldn't do it without the city's ongoing support, and you'll see us at Oak Street on Tuesday and Thursday nights from 6:30 to 8:30, September 24th through December 17th. I'm going to turn it over now to Samir Davis, who will share a bit more about our Welcoming Refugees program.
Thank you, Christine. Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council members, and esteemed community. My name is Samira Davis, and I'm a proud resident of Falls Church. Tonight, I stand before you to discuss the Welcoming Falls Church Refugees Initiative. It is a community-driven effort that brings together public and private resources to extend hospitality and support to immigrants and refugees. I first encountered Welcoming Falls Church in 2022 at the International Night at the Meridian High School, and I was immediately drawn by its mission. So since then, the Refugees Initiative has successfully settled 5 Afghan families in our community. Each family has 3 children and bringing a total of 13 children into the FCCPS. All fathers are employed. Some are holding multiple jobs to sustain the family. One father works for the district government. 2 are pursuing certification in HVAC. One works as paralegal, and one works for Trader Joe's. So this success is a testament to the invaluable public-private partnership, generous private donations, and the tireless dedication of countless volunteers who donated over 3,000 hours to assist with school, with transportation, and with job search, etc. Additionally, several organizations have provided support, including the ECDC, which is the Ethiopian Community Development Council, the Boy Scout, Temple Rodef Shalom, Falls Green, and many others. So I extend my sincere gratitude to the City of Falls Church, our community members, and everyone who has contributed to the success of the Refugees Initiative. However, I must address a significant challenge we currently face, which is affordable housing. Thank you for your time and attention, and I'll pass on to Paul Boson.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you, and good evening. As Samira was mentioning, we have some good news. You've heard a little bit of some of her comments about the way the community is connected with, what's happening. This project in its pilot phase is working. We've resettled 5 refugee families here, and they love the city, and their kids love the schools. It's exactly what we'd hoped for. People are mobilizing around it. 4,000 plus volunteer hours committed. It's really a lot of things are happening that we were hoping. And the city's been a catalyst. So lots of credit goes to city staff. It's been working with Kaylin Marks and others. It's been really a good experience getting deep into housing policy. We're deeper than we'd ever imagined. You all, through a grant of $50,000 of ARPA funds, you were a catalyst to this initiative, and it was visionary at that point. There are not a lot of communities around the country that are doing this. That $50,000 has catalyzed $46,000 of private giving, plus $20,000 plus of in-kind support of different kinds, along with the volunteer time. We have a committed partner in our landlord partner, Insight Property and Falls Green. They're with us and deeply with us. But the challenge is to get to affordable housing. The backdrop is that the supply of affordable housing in the city is very, very limited. So while the American dream is operating, and we know, we are in touch with these families, we know them deeply, and it is working. They are making progress. At the same time, we want to consult with you and consult with the community about what we can do to improve the program, so that it will work better for these families and will result in more of them residing in the city over time. So with that, we'd like to approach you in the coming weeks and months and request an additional budgetary outlay, to improve the program's design and ultimately retain more of the families in the city. There's a couple elements to this. We won't go into detail tonight, but we'd like to push the program down towards lower AMI, levels in the second year of the program. We'd also like to extend the program to a third year, watching how families' incomes, are increasing. And then, importantly, we also have some ideas, watching how the families are engaging in life here. We hope that we can bring some policy ideas, to the discussion, important discussion about affordable housing in the city, and think with the community creatively, about how to increase the supply of affordable housing. So, if you're willing to work with us, and if we together can move into this new structure, this new chapter of the program, we would also like to get back to work welcoming additional families. We would love to welcome another family to the city, on or around January 1st of next year. So there's more to be said. We look forward to discussions, including we think at the Housing Commission meeting on October 8th. We think we'll probably have an opportunity to talk in depth there. Also, maybe at an upcoming HSAC meeting. So I'll stop for now and get on to the most important invitation of all, which is to join us in welcoming week activities, including our annual ice cream social on Sunday at Mr. Bounce Park. This will be our 5th ice cream social along the way, interrupted by the pandemic, but from 3 to 5 p.m. On Sunday at Mr. Bounce Park, we hope that everybody can join us and celebrate a welcoming Falls Church. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would you all like to come up to receive the proclamation now? I'm sure some of us have comments after that, too. sure a few of us have comments, but I'll just start off that I'm certainly grateful to both Christine and Paul as the founders of Welcoming Falls Church, the volunteers, all the hours that have gone in, both in the program between resettling families as well as the Literacy Center. So much heart has gone into the program, so thank you for bringing those to Falls Church, but also creating this kind of community and culture around being welcoming and inclusive. Thank you for leading the conversation on that and holding us to our ideals and our values. So, Debbie?
I'd like to echo what Letty said and thank each and every one of you for your engagement. And I can't believe it's the 5th Ice Cream Social. I remember sitting with Paul and Christine in my role at the Falls Church Education Foundation and talking about how do you create a 501c3? How do you get people to donate? How do you get people interested and engaged? And looking at all the volunteers and thinking about all the volunteer hours that have been donated and all the private donations in addition to public support is really just incredible and a testament to you both in bringing our community together. And I just want to thank you and everybody who's been engaged with Welcoming Falls Church since its original, idea in your minds. And to meet the families at the most recent potluck and to talk to them about what they've learned in Falls Church and their engagement in the schools. It's just really heartwarming, and it's the reason that a lot of us are want to serve on city council and serve on boards and commissions is to make sure that we're doing things like this and supporting folks who are across the board really living out our mission as we've stated it in our 2040 vision. So thank you to each and every one of you. Congratulations.
I'll add that I also just wanted to congratulate you on your success and sort of being such an inspiring organization here locally. I know my work sort of often, I see, unfortunately, jurisdictions that are not, as welcoming to the idea of having refugees or sort of hostile to having refugees, among the local population. And so sort of, see the success locally of this organization and how openly, you model kind of welcoming people in our community and welcoming people in our schools. We do really appreciate all the efforts that go into it because we know that, you can resettle kind of refugee populations, but it takes work of the local community to really help those families succeed and link to all the resources that they're going to need, once they're actually settled somewhere. So thank you.
Ms. Underhill?
In the past year, I have been to many Welcoming Falls Church events, and they've all been phenomenal, from the gift drive to literacy graduation event to the Thanksgiving potluck. And it has just been truly inspiring, and just to see the vibrancy of the community that you serve, and meeting all of the people that are so grateful for the work that you do. So I'm proud to have worked with you guys, and I'm proud to see all the programming that you're putting on to continue to involve more people in this community. So thank you so much for all the work that you do.
Mr. Snyder?
Thanks very much. I know my wife Edie has been an actor and a strong supporter of your work. Please keep it up. That's what I have to say. Please keep it up. Thank you.
Great. We look forward to ice cream on Sunday with you all. Okay. Oh, Ms. Connolly? Okay. Well, you are up that week, because the third proclamation is declaring September 15th through October 15th as Hispanic Heritage Month in the City of Falls Church. And Ms. Connolly?
Hispanics have participated throughout the history of the United States in the support and defense of the principles and ideals upon which this country was founded, and Congress has chosen the time period ranging from September 15th to October 15th to celebrate the histories, cultures, and contributions of Hispanic Americans. And Hispanic people constitute a diverse group with origins in 21 different Spanish-speaking countries in the world, whose heritage links them with the North, Central, and South America, the Caribbean islands, Africa, Asia, and Europe. And whereas the Latin American and Hispanic population makes up approximately 11% of the City of Falls Church's population and is expected to continue increasing in size, and Hispanic community members contribute to the great diversity and unity of the City of Falls Church with a rich history of different cultures, racial and ethnic backgrounds, and ancestry. And as a community and as a government, we are proud of the cultural enrichment brought by the diversity of the Hispanic.
Now therefore, I, Letty Hardy, Mayor of the City of Falls Church, Virginia do hereby proclaim September 15th through October 15th as Hispanic Heritage Month in the City of Falls Church, and urge all to join and support the city's celebration of the rich heritage of our Hispanic residents. And do we have someone in the audience to receive the proclamation?
I don't think they made it this evening.
We'll save it for them.
Okay, thank you.
And last but not least is proclamation declaring September 9th through 13th, 2024 as Disability Voting Rights Week in the City of Falls Church. And Ms. Flynn will do the honors.
Thank you. Whereas there are over 61 million people of all ages with disabilities living in communities throughout the United States, and whereas over 38 million Americans with disabilities are eligible voters. And whereas the disability community has a critical interest in policies and decisions made and enacted at local, state, and national levels that directly impact the lives of people with disabilities. And whereas ensuring people with disabilities have access to voting is essential if these policies are to meet the real needs of people with disabilities in our communities. And whereas voting is one way for the disability community to have a say in the people and policies that impact communities. And whereas RevUp, which stands for Register, Educate, Vote, Use Your Power, is a national effort to build the power of the disability community.
Now therefore, I, Letty Hardy, Mayor of the City of Falls Church, Virginia, do hereby proclaim the week of September 9th through 13th, 2024 as Disability Voting Rights Week in the City of Falls Church, and urge all to support the growing involvement of the disability community in the political process.
And Jeff Pearson was going to join us tonight. He's one of our volunteer board members, but he was invited to the White House for the anniversary of the ADA, so he sends his regrets.
We'll give him a pass then. I guess the White House compared to City of Falls Church City Hall. Already, we saved that for him. Thank you all for these. Let's move on to oaths of office. Is there anyone in the audience here to receive an oath of office?
Oh, we first have the
sorry,
I voted
missed that.
sticker.
Thank you. Thank you. The electoral board here. Welcome, Ms. Berkey.
Hello, Mayor, esteemed council members. I am David Berkey, Registrar for the City of Falls Church, and with me is two members of the Electoral Board, Secretary Renee Andrews and Chair Alan Wisdom. Our Vice Chair Art DeSalle could not make it tonight. On behalf of the City of Falls Church Electoral Board, we are proud to announce the winning design for our first ever I Voted sticker contest. I believe you do have a picture to put up. I have some handouts as well. Ryan Miller designated the winner, designed the winning sticker, which is attached and can be seen on your screens. The City of Falls Church Electoral Board has assigned 2 youth representatives through the Youth Representative Initiative Committee of Citizens for a Better City, CBC. And this year, this last school year, we were excited to have the service of Megan Carpenter and Preston Liu. The Electoral Board discussed with Megan and Preston running a sticker contest in the schools, and they enthusiastically agreed. And after advertising in the school, they received 12 submissions from 6 middle and high school students. And the Electoral Board and the youth reps then made a selection of the top 5 submissions and sent them out in an election contest for the student body to vote. And out of 150 ballots, Ryan Miller's design won. So we want to thank all of our talented designers, and the Electoral Board and I would like to thank Megan and Preston for running a fantastic contest and congratulate Ryan Miller for submitting the winning design. It is expected to be ready for early voting starting on the 20th, Friday the 20th, and we expect to have I Voted stickers in our by mail absentee ballots. So up to 25% of the city is expected to vote by mail, and they will be able to receive those ballots with I Voted stickers. And if those citizens are paying attention tonight, if you do not have your ballot by October 1st, please contact my office. We understand there can be issues with the USPS, so we want to make sure that you do get your ballot. So if you have signed up for it, please reach out to us after October 1st.
Terrific, thank you. I know Ryan Miller, unfortunately, actually moved away, so she's on the European time, so I let her family know that we were honoring tonight. So if you are watching, Ryan, congratulations, the sticker's terrific. I know it's probably like 1 a.m. for you right now. Wish you all could be here. Thank you all to the Electoral Board for organizing more community involvement in the stickers. I think it's terrific, and it's very welcoming of all the different languages we speak in Falls Church. Any other questions or comments for the Electoral Board and Mr. Bierke? Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're ready to move on to any oaths.
And our oaths are all caught up. I would like folks to know that if you're interested in volunteering for a city board or commission, you can find information about it at fallschurchva.gov/BC, or /BC, sorry, fallschurchva.gov/BC.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on to receipt of public comment. Madam Clerk?
Yes, would you like me to summarize the written comments?
Yes, please.
Okay, I can do that. These are comments received since the last regular city council meeting. The following wrote in support of accessory dwelling units. John Conroy of 1307 Ellison Street, Julie Conroy, 1307 Ellison Street, Daniel Henderson, 1002 Madison Lane, Timothy P. Roche, 1015 Parker Street, Peter Villano of Falls Church, Tara Villano of 1009 Parker Street, and James and Liz Weatherly of 305 Buxton Road. Jean Gresco of 120 North Fairfax Street asked for more advertisement of accessory dwelling unit open houses. Christina Ward of 807 Fulton Avenue provided topics to consider when reviewing changes to the accessory dwelling unit code. Regarding the sidewalk easement at 412 West Broad Street, Jacob Bernasian, attorney for the property owner, asked that the city accept the deed of dedication signed by his client. We got some comments about the bike master plan. The following wrote in support of the plan and also suggested some changes. Craig Burry of 800 Villa Ridge Road, Jillian Economo, Joe Ganley, Andrew Olison of 615 Lincoln Avenue, Timothy P. Roche, 1015 Parker Street, and Frank Williamson. Comments on greening of Lincoln Avenue project. The following provided comments and suggestions regarding the project. Mike Curtin and Maureen McDonald, 601 Lincoln Avenue, and John Fritsch of 601 Lincoln Avenue. I think that's not correct, but John Fritsch is on Lincoln Avenue, and he's here to speak tonight, so. Rent relief, Deborah Z. Roth, a member of the Human Services Advisory Council, wrote in support of the proposed amendment to the city code regarding rent relief. We got a few things about the budget. The Bike Falls Church requested that any budget surplus be used for road maintenance, greening of Lincoln bike and pedestrian improvements, and development of bike master plan routes. The Falls Church Climate Action Network requested that any budget surplus be used to complete implementation of the community energy and government operations energy action plans. In other comments, David Hale of 602 Northwest Street wrote about sidewalk access impediments around the city. Fred Thompson for the Broadway Condominium Owners Association provided comments to the Planning Commission regarding the commission's final review of the Lee Park townhouses and requested that they be forwarded to the City Council. Christina Tripaldi asked if the city would install flags and planters on utility poles along the residential section of Broad Street. And as far as board review items, the Planning Commission provided the required recommendation regarding the design of a replacement bridge on Sharrow Avenue.
Great, thank you. That was
Thank
a lot
you.
after.
That was a lot.
Thank you for those. Let's move on to receipt of live public comment now.
Yes, and for the public may address the council for a 3-minute period. And if you are interested in speaking, there are some forms in the back you can bring up, and I will call you. And so first up is Nick Benton, followed by John Fritsch.
Good evening, Council. I asked the city clerk to give you copies of the book, The Life and Times of the Falls Church News Press, which is actually, hold it, I don't have a copy to hold up myself, thank you. This was written by the late Charlie Clark, who was a truly professional journalist who worked on this book for a year and read literally every back issue of the paper going all the way back to 1991 to put together the contents of this, which means it doubles as kind of a history of the City of Falls Church over that period of time, too. I hope you'll enjoy it. If you've already got a copy, you can share it with others. I'm just going to read the letter that I sent over to you later this afternoon. Dear Council, it is noted that city policy decisions are now routinely being made with a very scant inclusion of public input, namely such as the dot voting at the recent public events for prospective accessory dwelling legislation, and even circulated petitions that are touted as representing a legitimate sentiment, even if signed by only 300 of the city's 15,000 residents. I propose to you that insofar as Falls Church is now the only jurisdiction in the region that has its own weekly newspaper delivered to every address, that you take advantage of this unique capability to do a better job of reaching and thereby hearing back from your constituents. The proposal is that the city revive the policy that worked so well for 8 years in the earlier part of this century, when it commandeered 2 full pages in each edition of the news press to communicate directly with the entirety of the city's population. The pages, the brainchild of the late city manager Dan McKeever, were presented as clearly distinct from the news press's proper, and under the arrangement there were no misunderstandings among readers about the distinction between the paper and the city pages carried therein. It worked extremely well for 8 years. I urge you to direct the city staff to revive this uniquely effective tool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have John Fritsch.
Welcome.
Good evening. My name is John Fritsch. I live at 603 Lincoln Avenue, a former Architecture Advisory Board member and chair from 02 to 17. I'm here to comment tonight on the Greening of Lincoln project. I would like to commend the concept plan for the general character of the improvements on the eastern 400 to 500 blocks. The plan shows parking provided on both sides of the street. Intersections are narrowed to calm traffic, and sidewalks are protected by green space and parking spaces. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for the western 600 to 900 blocks. While the road is narrow at this end, I do believe it's possible and necessary to create the same character at the west end of the street. This project should be an improvement to the character of this neighborhood. The current plan for the west end of the street has traffic flow shifting from side to side from the 800 to 900 blocks with no parking along the entire north side of the 800 block. Through the 600 and 700 along sections of no parking, unevenly distributed parking, and bring the sidewalk immediately adjacent to the street. There are long no parking sections which could create bottleneck situations for everyday activities like deliveries, moving trucks, trash, etc. And these sections could be an eyesore as multiple parking signs would be needed in order to identify these no parking zones. The plan for these blocks creates an awkward hybrid street that lacks character and makes daily living more difficult and less safe. Because of the time limitations on this project, I have created an alternative plan to show the potential for these blocks. I would ask that you review this plan during your work session with staff and consider adjustments to improve the character and safety of this end of the street. I'd also just like to quickly comment on specifically the parking at the 600 block and at Lincoln Park. Today, there are approximately 25 parking spaces in this area, and all but 2 houses have parking in front of them. The current plan provides 12 parking spaces in this area, and only 3 houses have parking in front of them, and half of the parking for the park is lost. The plan provides 50% of parking in this area at one location in front of one house, and this parking is not accessible by crosswalk or sidewalk, thus requiring citizens and park goers to using these spaces to walk in the street after parking. The plan moves the crosswalk to the park closer to the crosswalk of the intersection, approximately 60 steps away, and in the process removes 4 parking spaces. It is my understanding that parking at 603 to 605 has been removed so as not to disturb retaining wall at 605A. I've measured this location. I believe there is enough room to provide parking here and still maintain over 2 feet clearance at this retaining wall. The plan appears to provide 8 to 9 feet clearance at this wall. More needs to be done to provide adequate safe parking for the residents and park goers in this area. Having lived at this location for over 18 years, I can tell you with confidence that the concept plan does not provide enough parking to effectively serve this area, and it creates a more dangerous parking situation for residents and park goers. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Yes, and that's the last person signed up. Thank you.
Okay. And you're right, we do have a work session on September 16th, and so some of us probably will have comments about Greening of Lincoln for the city manager shortly. Great. Thank you. We also have the library annual report scheduled as part of tonight's report from the city manager. So should we start with that before we get to council requests? Welcome.
Mayor Hardy, Vice Mayor Hiscott, and members of council. Hello, I'm Marshall Webster, Acting Library Director, and I'm joined by our Library Board Chair, Elise Stein. I'm pleased this evening to present the library's FY24 annual report, which highlights library accomplishments for the period covering July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024. As the statistics on the back page of the report demonstrate, the library experienced another year of steadily increasing engagement with our community, including 450,000 borrowed books, DVDs, magazines, ebooks, and other materials, representing a 4% increase from FY23, 168,000 library visits, an average of almost 14,000 a month, and an increase of 17% from FY23, 2,300 study and conference room reservations, an increase of 7% from FY23, 7,900 public computer station sessions, an increase of 28% from FY23, and 12,400 people attending our expanded programming offerings, which included book discussions, author talks, preschool story times, music concerts, informational lectures on current events, Spanish and German conversation classes, a monthly gaming night for adults, and an incredibly popular weekly knitting group. FY24 additionally marked the formal launch of the library's 5-year strategic plan, with its emphasis on elevating programming, expanding hours and access, expanding outreach, and enhancing community awareness and engagement. Efforts in the first year resulted in implementation of several noteworthy projects, including installation of a large-screen ADA-compliant catalog station, access to gaming and STEM-related activities in our youth and teen areas, creation of a pilot memory lab station to help the public digitize their photos and analog mementos, reorganization of our picture book collection to make it browsable by popular high-demand subjects, acquisition of new online digital collection platform for the Falls Church History Room, and an expansion of weekend hours with an additional expansion just last month, now allowing access to the library from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays. Finally, in FY24, the library started a year-long celebration of its 125 years serving the greater Falls Church community, which was kicked off in January 2024 with the unveiling of a new Mary Riley Stiles portrait photo and the launching of a webpage exploring the library's extensive history. And the library received a gold standard recognition by the Virginia Public Library Directors Association for meeting the highest performance benchmarks for standards set by the Library of Virginia. We couldn't be more thankful for the incredible support we received from the city and the Falls Church community in FY24, and we look forward to continuing to build on our FY24 accomplishments in FY25. Thanks. And I'd like to add one thing to the Welcoming Falls Church. In addition to hosting one of the sessions, we've made the ebook and the e-audiobook available for download without a waiting list through the talk on Saturday. And it's can be found in our Libby app, or there's a link in the event in our events calendar.
Great, thank you.
And I just wanted, on behalf of the board, to echo what Marshall said about thanking you for your support and allowing us to expand the hours of the library. That's one of our big goals. So thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm sure we have questions and comments before y'all go. Vice Mayor?
Thank you for this report and for the great visuals that are easy to follow. And I had a couple of comments and then a couple of questions for you all. The first was I'm glad you mentioned the Seeking Fortune Elsewhere. I'm really excited that there are unlimited copies of that because people like I who are just going to read it this week can actually access it and really actively participate. So I think that is one of many things you all can do to continue to help support things like Welcoming Falls Church. I'm excited to also try the digitizing photos. I think that's kind of a cool additional program to have at the library, and we'll bring more people in who then will learn more about the services you all provide. So I think that's fantastic. Where like I said, I really like the visuals and the graphics and the, it's easy to understand. I'd love to have like the last page be the over time, you know, so we can see, because I know we had some interesting, challenging data in 2020, like where some things were lower, our library use was huge because of that's what everybody could do. And so I'd like to see kind of over time, and I know we used to have a bar graph that showed kind of each of those data points over, maybe a 10-year period of time. I just think that's really interesting. And, over that period of time, we can see here's where we invested in the library, here's where the additional programs we could do, or how the numbers may or may not have shifted. So I would love to see that longitudinal look as well. I think it complements a lot of the great data that you have there. It's also fun to see that, I've checked out the 5 top titles myself, so I'm like, all right, I guess I was reading the same thing everybody else was reading. One of the questions I had on the number of total card holders, it's over 31,000. Do you have a breakdown of how many of those are city residents? I mean, obviously, they're more than just city residents. We only have 16.
It fluctuates. I believe we have about 11,000 city resident card holders, which is a pretty high percentage compared to other jurisdictions in the area for adoption of cards by the residents. But we have a very high percentage of non-resident card holders, which is due to the reciprocal agreement, which is a benefit to city residents as well, because they're able to use Fairfax County and Arlington and the District of Columbia and many other libraries throughout the region.
Yeah, I'd love to see, I don't know if we have access to that data, but how many of the cardholders are Falls Church City residents? And I know we don't ask people when they come into the doors, like, are you a Falls Church City resident? But it would be interesting to get an idea of how many of those visits are people, because that also highlights how walkable it is or bikeable it is. And
well, we're not sure about the visits, but when someone registers for a card,
then you can know,
we ask for ID, we do designate them city residents or metro area. We have a few designations, so we can create reports.
That would be great. And then I've been asked a couple times, so like, for instance, you have multiple copies of this book that we're discussing on Saturday. What's the average length of time that you keep either a title on the online or on, physically in our library? Because I know there's a great rotation of materials.
Well, it depends on the materials and the format. So with ebooks, in this instance, there's actually a service that we can use on an ad hoc basis that lets us buy, essentially pay for a checkout at a low price. So we're basically just allowing people to check it out and incurring a one-time cost. And we sometimes use that in order to reduce hold lists if they get really large. And it's less expensive than buying multiple copies of the books. However, with ebooks, the purchasing model is different than a print book because usually they're really leased for either a period of time or a number of checkouts. So how long something stays in the ebook collection, for instance, there's a lot of turnover because books just expire and you have to decide whether to buy it or not another time, which is usually based on its previous usage. So we can't always rebuy things after we've had them for a while because we're also trying to buy new titles. For physical books, we just analyze the usage and try and keep a balanced collection, and that's really just based on whether it's been sitting unused on the shelf for multiple years. But we try and keep an active collection, both just to have breadth, but also to constantly add new titles and make space for the new titles coming in, because we can't keep everything.
Sure. Great.
But the loan period is 3 weeks. So if you borrow Seeking Fortune Elsewhere, even if you borrow it on Friday, which will be the last day we offer it in unlimited checkout, it's for 3 weeks.
Great. Well, thank you again for your work, and to the library board for all of its support of our city. And I look forward to seeing the reports over time, too. Thank you.
Other comments, Ms. Flynn?
Yeah, I'll just quickly thank you and your staff, and of course the library board and all the volunteers for the work that goes into the library. It's such a local sort of treasured space, right? And it's a reflection on sort of the care and dedication and commitment that you have not only to the quality, of the programming, but kind of constant reflection on what it is that's working, or what new things that you can be doing, or kind of what needs that you can continue to meet. So kind of thank you and the library board, and again, the staff. And it's an easy place to support, for us, because you see sort of these snapshot reports, and with the increased hours and the increased usage and the increased borrowing and kind of the increased spaces that you've created kind of across the spectrum of how people can interact, both in person and online. So I guess what I'll do is maybe 2 opportunities for you. One is if you could maybe provide like a little known fact or something that you feel like people don't know about the library that maybe you wish that they knew more, right? Sure. Here's your opportunity to do so. And also when we recently were talking to a volunteer who had been working with the library. It was such kind of a wonderful and engaging and kind of meaningful experience. So if there are opportunities that you want to kind of pitch for volunteers at the library, maybe you could take this opportunity to do so.
Sure. Well, to the first request, I have to limit the number that I could bring up, but one certainly is the Falls Church History Room. So I think that's clearly the most unique resource in our library. It really differentiates us from any other library, and not in that they don't have similar collections, but that collection is unique to this community. So I think sometimes people aren't aware that resource exists, and even though we've moved it to the upper level, sometimes people don't make it into the back of that floor. So I would encourage people to explore that on our website, and hopefully later this year we'll have our new digital collection software live, and people will be able to search more and more of the collection from home and utilize it. I would also say that I mentioned this new picture book reorganization that occurred in June, and I think people are still familiarizing themselves with that, but it's basically taken a collection of over close to 6,000 items that were just shelved alphabetically by author, but kids want books on trucks, they want books on airplanes, they want books on this fairy tale or this popular character, and our wonderful youth services staff created this great system to allow people to browse by different subjects. So I would encourage people to go downstairs and take a look at that new setup. And the second question, well, you'll have to repeat that. Oh, the volunteers.
Yeah,
yes.
volunteers.
So we have a link when you're on mrspl.org. On the top of the page, it says support the library, and there's a link to the volunteer page, and it talks about opportunities for adult volunteers and teen volunteers. And they're wonderful. They've helped us with inventories of the collection, processing materials, they're scanning of materials. So they're a real driving force behind the work we do. So thank you. Yeah.
And some of them have even become employees of the library.
Yes.
So an opportunity for
Not
us.
coincidentally, yeah.
Ms. Connolly?
Thank you for your report. I had seen it already because I am the liaison to the library board, but it's always nice to see the official version. And I really just want to thank both of you for the work that you've done. The library board has come a long way in the last few years, from advocating just for a new building to now doing, right? That was the primary focus of the library board for many years, and the staff for many years. And now that we have this new building, you are really building the library into a third place, a community place where people can gather, a living room for this community, for people to be together, to learn about the history, to read magazines and books and crossword puzzles and do other puzzles and get together and share in the community. So I think that's very important. I always enjoy coming to library board meetings, so it is my pleasure to be your liaison and to learn about the different pieces of the library and what makes a library work. And some things that we don't always appreciate because we aren't the library experts, but there's always something in those library board meetings. Now when you have special events, that makes people come to the library, and then they come and visit more often. So I think the increase in events has also been really impressive, and the partnerships that you've created. And then my last thing is just the 125th anniversary, which has been a wonderful way to celebrate the history of the library. I love the little online things you're putting in, pictures, stories, the book collection, and all of that. So you're doing a great job celebrating that as well. So thank you.
Thank you. So I have a few comments as well. So first of all, happy 125th birthday.
Thank you.
That's terrific. Second, I guess I'll preface all my comments by saying that clearly the library is more than books and more than numbers. And so thank you for all the innovation and the creativity that goes into how you guys are evolving kind of library offerings. I think that's terrific. But I will want to echo Ms. Sean Hiscott's request around kind of showing trends over time, because I think some of us have been up here where we remember the bar chart over time that showed circulation and visits. I think obviously some of that changed during COVID, but from my recollection and looking at the 2020 numbers and the 2019 numbers, we haven't quite actually rebounded in terms of visits, items checked out and that sort of thing. So it'd be great to see that trend over time. And then 3 specific trends and requests that I would love to get a better understanding of. Since we've invested in those additional weekend hours, how are visitors looking during that extra block of time on weekend? That would be great data to have. Second, I think a trend that we talked about before is kind of the online versus physical items, whether you're seeing people shifting usage over time. And then third is self-checkout. And personally, that's been a great innovation. I know my kids love that, especially when they're young, being able to scan that themselves. So I'd love to know what percentage of people, if we know, use self-checkout versus using actually in-person checkout. I think that would be great. In general, I think as we shift from, as Ms. Connolly said, advocacy for the new building, we just want to make sure that we are being good stewards of that big capital investment for the community, and that we are evolving with the needs of the community as it changes too. So I think that data over time will be really important. So.
Sure, and that's all data we can provide, and I think those are good suggestions for the annual report. I will note that it can be a little difficult simply because in some cases we're using different systems. So, for instance, we have a different visit system that's much more accurate. I would say that our circulation numbers are approaching pre-COVID finally, so we're close to that. And I think that we just try our best to tell that story better. So
great. Thank you.
And I would like to make a shout out to Jenny Carroll. She was still the library director for the first 3 months of FY24. So she deserves credit for many of the successes.
Thank you. Mr. Snyder, you have a final comment?
I just wanted to thank you, Marshall, especially, and to all the staff and the board members for a great job. Really fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All righty, Mr. Shields, back to you for the report of the city manager.
Well, thank you, Mayor Hardy, and members of council, members of the community. I'd like to, tonight, if I could, take a little bit of extra time for the city manager's report. I've got 3 things that I'd like to report on, and I'd like to invite Al Astorga, our project manager for the property at the Fellows property, and brief the council on the conceptual planning for the redevelopment of that park. Before we turn it over to Mr. Astorga, a few things to update the community on. One relates to the sidewalk easement at 412 West Broad Street in front of the Beto's Works business. I'm very pleased to inform the council that this evening at 6:30, just prior to this meeting, we did sign the easements and the plat and the deeds for a dedicated sidewalk easement in front of that business. I want to thank Steve Dodoclian, the owner of this property, for granting this easement to the city at no cost. And I also want to thank our city attorney for helping get this over the finish line. And the City Council appreciate your support for this project and laying down a very firm deadline that if this was not executed by the next meeting, i.e. tonight, that the council would authorize condemnation. This is a very important connection for walkability in the city, and we're very pleased to have this easement. So we will keep keep the community informed about the next steps. We do have contractors lined up to now begin to put that sidewalk in, and so we'll provide everybody an update on that, and of course, we'll work with Mr. Dadaklian just on good communication about when that construction will happen. Secondly, I want to update the community on the Virginia Village project. This is a project where the city is identified in the small area plan for the city center area of trying to find opportunities to preserve affordability at the Virginia Village with the quadplexes there at Shirley Street and Gibson Street. Over the past 3 years, the city has taken action to provide funding to acquire quadplexes, and the EDA has been the city's partner in that. Those quadplexes, 5 of them are now titled to the EDA. In addition, we have a partnership with Wesley Housing to be the operator of the units as they are acquired, but also to work with the city on possibilities for future redevelopment when that time comes. The thing I wanted to update the community on is that part of our plan of land acquisition and financing, of course, we're using Amazon Reach funds to acquire these properties, as well as ARPA funds, as well as a city contribution and an EDA contribution. We had been working with Virginia Housing over a number of months for an interim loan so that the EDA could be paid back for its appropriation to this effort, and the City Council also could have the capital reserves paid back. We have been informed after months of working with Virginia Housing that the loan committee is not going to approve that interim loan as we've requested. So we are now going to work with the council and with the EDA and with Wesley Housing on some alternative strategies for moving forward. We do have a balance of funds within the acquisition strike force sufficient such that if the EDA were to wish to be reimbursed, the funds are there for that to happen. And if the city council were to wish that the capital reserves be reimbursed for the funds that the city has put into this, that also could be handled within the balances of grant funds that we have currently available. However, if we take that approach, that would slow down or delay our ongoing efforts at acquisition of additional properties there. And so that's a consequence we'll need to think through. We anticipate that in the coming weeks, we'll be meeting with the council to discuss this in work session, and we'll bring the Housing Commission and the EDA, of course, into those discussions as well. On one piece of good news, the city put in a grant application with Virginia Housing for assistance in putting together a working group to envision what a future redevelopment on this site could look like in terms of the scale of the density and the mix of uses that could go in this property, and also to do some initial conceptual planning in terms of the financing for such a redevelopment. We've received a $36,000 grant to help facilitate the work of that working group. So we're very pleased about that, and we'll work with the council to have appointees to that group, and we would recommend that that work get underway this fall and continue on into the winter and spring. So that's the update that I wanted to provide for the community, and look forward to working through next steps as we look for the future of the Virginia Village area. So those are two things I wanted to update on. The third thing is just upcoming activities this weekend, and I do note that Amy Youngs is here in the audience, and maybe after Al has given the Fellows property, we could just talk about some of the highlights of what's coming up this coming weekend with the Falls Church Festival. But unless there are any questions for me, I'll turn it over to Mr. Astorga to we have just about a 5-minute presentation on the conceptual plans that have come through the Rec and Parks Advisory Board for the future of the the Fellows property. It is not called the Fellows Park, it's the Fellows property, and we do envision that as part of the planning for this, we'll ultimately have a naming session for this park in the future as well. But Mr. Astorga, I'll take it away. Actually, can I make one other introductory comment for this item? The council has appropriated $200,000 for architecture and engineering. And so a decision point for the council is, with these concepts, should we proceed with an A&E contract to further develop these plans? The City Council has not appropriated funds to construct these park improvements. It is listed in the CIP as a total of a $2 million project, but $1.8 million of it has not been appropriated. There's not a source of funding identified at this point. So when we talk about budget matters coming up in September, this will be one of the items for the council's consideration. And so we wanted you to have this information about conceptually what's planned for this park so that you can then carry into that future funding discussion. Mr. Astorga, sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to make that point.
Is this working now? Great, okay.
Yeah.
Let me introduce myself again. My name is Al Astorga. I work for DPW. Previously, I worked for 30 years for the Department of Parks in Montgomery County, both as a designer and then later on as a division chief of the maintenance department, building and maintaining park facilities. So parks are in my blood. With that being said, the first slide here is just a summary of what I'm going to show you, how we got here, show you the time it has taken for the master plan process, guide you through the approved design concept, and discuss the next steps. Who's got the clicker? Next, okay. The master plan was developed over several years and multiple public services, and then followed by the concept plan development. Next. The master plan set three major objectives for the park, which were incorporated into the design: preservation and protection, protect nature, environmental education, and passive recreation, passive recreational activities with limited active recreation. In other words, they wanted nature to be the main feature. Next. Let me give you a tour of the proposed park. First, let me start. I'm going to use a pointer if you don't mind. I'm going to start up here. This is where we begin the park. Facilities are, they are the site development requirements. I'll start with those. Starting at Timber Street to the park to the park, from here to here, there's a missing link sidewalk. That is part of this design. We need a sidewalk along Parker Avenue from there to Oak, and we need to improve the sidewalk along Oak Street there. Those are site development requirements. Now for the park. The park facility, this is the entrance to the park right here. And it's the bookend of Howard E. Herman Park. Howard E. Herman comes in at Broad Street and it empties out right about there. So this will be the ending of that trail. This rubberized path, it starts right here and it goes into the park, and it is it meanders through the park, and it meanders through the park in a way that protects these trees, major trees here, which are all either champion trees or major specimens. So the trees were very important to the site. There will be a platform where the old house was and a shelter where the old garage were. This area here is, right over here is the Grove. where the community can harvest nuts, fruits, and berries. This right here is a rain garden to provide water quality and control water discharge, and it will also give the city credits on both of these water issues. And lastly, this area here will be designated as a natural preserve where no activities are planned. Next picture, please. This is a picture of the entrance arch with a scavenger hunt plaque located right there. This is the arch. And this is the corner where this will all occur, this existing site, and this is what we'd like to put in that site. Next. This is the rubberized path that goes in like this. The material was selected because it was the least invasive to the roots of the system of the trees, easy to maintain, flexibility of material to allow root growth. Next slide. This is the grove where we will plant shaggy bark hickory trees. These nuts can be harvested, eaten raw, roasted, or made into milk. They are considered the delicacy. They're known as the black truffle of the world. Black truffle of the world. And that's this area right here is where the hickory trees would go. The other trees would be pawpaw trees. This is the pawpaw tree with its fruit. It is a North American tropical fruit. That's what it's described as. It is a mixture of kind of like a mango, banana, and passion fruit. It is highly sought after. We expect people will be coming from all over to pick these guys up. And this area down at the bottom here will be a berry patch. Next slide. Next one. Okay, thank you. As I mentioned, on the entrance there will be this medallion, which will be the treasure hunt. And throughout the park, there will be these native animals, which are made out of a play equipment polymer. So these animals are designed to be climbed on and take the enjoyment of kids that any piece of play equipment would experience. Here we have the Trex platform right here. And this is where outdoor classes will be able to be held either by the school, which is across the street, or an interpretive by interpreters, natural interpreters, or rec classes can be held, such as yoga, tai chi, anything that is that requires a nice flat surface. And along that we have the shelter right there, which is much like the shelter at Big Chimneys, and this was designed with the idea that you would have gatherings, picnics, or just an area to get out of the sun. This area here is an area where we will place some specialty benches and use it for arts in the parks. Next shelter, next picture. This is a picture of the missing sidewalk along Parker Avenue. As you can see, there's already a trail there, but no sidewalk. There is a sidewalk on the other side, but this area is going to need a sidewalk, possibly a retaining wall, depending on how we can grade this, and lighting to meet all the ADA requirements. Next slide. Okay, this is where we get good. This is the estimate based on the actual price of all the items as of December 2023. The site included all the items not park-related. This site work here, that's the estimate for, like I mentioned earlier, site work. These are not park-related items, like the sidewalk, ADA ramps, lighting along the street, ADA ramps, and repairs and modifications to the existing sidewalk along Oak. This number here, those are the park features, what I described in the previous slides, the shelters, the groves, all of those items. So our total construction cost is this, $1,179,767. We used a contingency of 40%, and that is basically an industry standard to use at this point. We are at 15% design stage, so before any further development can occur, the estimate has a 40% contingency included in it. The next is the architectural and engineering and construction inspection costs, which also include city staff time, which brings us to the total of $1,946,617. We have currently $200,000, as Wyatt mentioned, and this is what is unfunded at this point. Next slide, please. Depending on what direction you give us tonight, if we are given the go-ahead to proceed, this is the timeline we hope to accomplish by setting out the construction documents now and shooting for construction to begin in April of 2026. That about covers my presentation.
Great.
So the goal was to get this information to you and answer any questions you might have about it, and then we'll carry this conversation into the budget amendment discussion that will happen, that will get kicked off at your meeting on September 26th.
Great. Well, we have Mr. Elstorga here. Let's start with questions on fellows, and then we can work backwards on the other updates that we got from Mr. Shields. Who's got questions or comments on fellows? Ms. Underhill?
Is there grant funding available for a project like this?
There are some grants for it. It's not as easy and accessible as we have with transportation. Have been working with Caitlin Sosby and Allie Golden to see what's out there in terms of straight parks, because it's not a regional trail and some of the other transportation associated, it's not as easy to identify. So today, or your budget discussion, we won't have an answer, but it is being explored.
Okay, thank you. Something that we have been talking about is, we get to have beautiful parks and all sorts of things, and then what happens with maintenance. Looking at all of the different things that were part of this proposal, it seems like a fairly low maintenance park. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. We worked with the maintenance folk, and that's why we identified the rubberized path, the solar lights. Everything that we looked at is very low maintenance. We're looking at, we did come up with a maintenance cost, but it was very low and very doable.
Okay. Are there things like, will there be like grass mowing and other things like that would be part of it, or is it sort of wild?
Actually, very little grass mowing. Everything is going to be sort of grown, big nature area. The biggest maintenance is going to be within the trees while they're growing. That was the one place where we identified. We were going to use, we need to get them growing, and while they're maturing, we're going to use the well there as a source of water for irrigation of the trees. So we were looking at making this the least maintenance of all.
Great. The final thing I had was I really applaud the use of pawpaw trees and the hickory trees. That's incredibly creative. I'd been looking into this, though, and it's very hard to find fruit-bearing trees in cities. Is there a reason for that?
Well, this actually, the idea of the fruit-bearing trees came from our arborist, Charles, and his assistant, because of just what you say. The pawpaw tree apparently is very, very popular, and people drive for miles around to get this fruit. And the hickory nut is also very, very sought after, and they're both easy to maintain. That was a nice thing. And they were both native to the area, and more importantly, we felt that instead of trying to create the idea of neighborhood gardens, that the neighborhood could sort of use these as a area to use it for their own use, the berries, the pawpaw fruit, and the nuts.
Okay, thank you so much, appreciate it.
Sure.
This one?
I just had a few quick comments and questions. So I think this is a great park design sort of concept at this stage. I think it's exciting. Thank you to you and the advisory board, and Rec and Parks for the work that's gone into this so far, to kind of see the different features and also the different users, that seems sort of just a multi-age, kind of multi-generational park, right? I know we have a son at the age that he's into scavenger hunts, or we can keep him engaged and actually walk with us by doing finding things and sketching the medallions to kind of take something home from the park with him. So I appreciate all of those features. I had two kind of questions. You mentioned the 15% design. When we talk about the $200,000 investment for architectural and engineering, where does that bring us from the 15% kind of toward, from kind of a more rudimentary plan to further along in terms of starting to dig, right, and execute on this, or how much of it is assigned to the construction period? So the breakdown of that 200,000 and what it accomplishes in bringing this forward.
Well, this is kind of a new way of doing things. Instead of sort of giving the designer a blank piece of paper and say, build this tell us what you want to build out there. Staff sat around and we came up with this concept. The rec department, the arborist, everybody, the maintenance folk, everybody got together and we did this design. When we presented it to the A&E firm, they said, well, this is great because this is 15%. We don't have to come up with 3 or 4 different concepts. We can go directly to engineering, which is going to cut your costs tremendously. Their big concern has been public meetings. Each public meeting they would attend, they told us they would cost us somewhere around $7,500. So we've taken all of that out, and we've gotten to the point where they can actually start doing more engineering than anything else, and that has shrunk the cost of our contract for the A&E to about $100,000.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, and looking sort of at the costs too, it's nice to see that it's nice to see so much of the contingency in you're building in the cushion, but then it's always frustrating to see so much of it as the contingency because you have to plan out for years in advance and the costs are escalating in the meantime. So, I appreciate the work that's gone into getting the concepts as far as they are, while, recognizing that hopefully this is a property that we can kind of create more park space in a kind of economical way. And then the only other comment I had was when I looked at the designs, or sort of the mock-up, it shows the city trash and recycling containers. They are just they're all throughout the city, consistent in design. And I was wondering for a park like this, and having recently come back from a place that does, actual like containers, whether it made sense to have like enclosed trash and recycling in like a woodland park like this. And it may also be an opportunity to do more of our not utility wraps, but art wraps, so that you could have, more like an enclosed trash and recycling box with the like sliding doors and whatnot. That's an art wrap that relates to the park rather than like the exposed trash and recycling, given that it is in a woodland space and there will be kind of whatever other animals and creatures around there. So something to consider.
Those amenities are very easy to take care of during the design. What kind of trash can you want, what colors, and that type of stuff. So, yeah, that will, as we proceed, we
right. Yeah,
will
it was put a pin in it because I won't always remember to raise something like this later, and it's the minutia of looking at the picture and saying, oh, let me put it on someone else's list for a later date. So thank you.
Mrs. Shawnsiska?
Thank you. I really am enjoying looking at this design and been following this process interestedly for many years. I had a question. If you go back to the costs on the sidewalk, I'm familiar with that Parker Ave and then, of course, the Oak Ave. What percentage of it, I'm looking at the cost, and I've got to imagine a lot of it is constructing the sidewalk, just based upon our other discussions we've had about how much sidewalk costs around the city. It seems like the bulk of, I'm assuming that a lot of this cost is sidewalk related.
Yes, a huge part of it is we have to go all the way from Timmons Street down to Oak. We have to provide ADA ramps and maybe an intermediate crossing. ADA ramps in themselves cost $15,000. They're kind of expensive. Then we have to do a widening in certain areas of the Oak Street because there's telephone poles or utility poles right in the middle of the sidewalk. So we have to do little jut outs. We have to do ADA ramps crossing Oak Street towards the school. So yes, and possibly the retaining wall, that would be a big ticket item. And we were looking at to make this park self-contained, or we were looking at solar lights that would have the lighting package and the battery on top, so there would be no wires or nothing like that, and it'd be self-contained. So there's a lot of big ticket items on this site.
If you were to guesstimate, I mean, just like half the cost is for hardscape sidewalks on Parker and Oak?
The site work cost?
Yeah, just.
I would say.
Because the park features are presumably all the trees and the rubberized and everything else. So site work, the bulk of that?
Yeah, the $490,000, the bulk of that is what I just mentioned. It's almost all the exterior work along the side of the park.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, and there are kind of two components of this project in my mind, which are, because I would like to see, no matter what happens within the Fellows property project, I'd still like to see that side of Parker and Oak Street having, the back to complete streets concept and having ADA access to the number of students who cross over to get to the school right there. So I'm just thinking out loud about what components are the sidewalk and ADA compliance versus actually building out the park structure. Because there might be different, there might be different ways we think about the budget if we separate those components. Just one thought. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed and you answered, I had like 6 questions and you answered all of them through your presentation. So thank you for that thoroughness. I really appreciate your time and your experience and knowing what questions are going to be asked. So thank you.
Mr. Snyder?
Thanks a lot. If you could review for me the public input, and that was one of your slides, is that all right?
Sure. Could we go, I think it's the 3rd slide. There you go.
Okay, so this plan reflects, to the extent that you can, the substance of the public inputs?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I want to follow up on the question of sidewalk, because did you tell me that there's already sidewalk on the other side of Parker?
On the opposite side of Parker, there is a sidewalk that goes from Oak to
So
Timmins.
there are large parts of the city where there are no sidewalks at all. And I do want to follow up on the necessity for that sidewalk across the street, especially when it triggers a retaining wall and a fairly expensive, and if you tell me it's absolutely required by law, then I guess we have to do it, but I'm really wondering about that. And with regard to Oak Street, if there are places where the utility poles, and again, that's a condition around the city,
right,
that we address that, that's great. And I think that, a convenient way across the street from the schools, convenient and safe is all good. But I wonder if there's any way we can cut some of those hard infrastructure costs. Are they really essential? And would those same dollars be better spent in other parts of the city, literally where there are no sidewalks at all? So that's a question. And then, has all the vegetation been tested for our particular climate? I think we've sort of learned the hard way that not everything grows well here. And so I love the idea of fruit trees, but do they all do well in our climate? And is there a good research background to establish that everything we're planted is very likely to do well here, considering the kind of summer that we've had, et cetera? So those are just two questions. And a third one, finally, was this connected with a trail that we already have? Did I hear that at the beginning?
Yes.
Right.
Go ahead.
So I'm gonna give Cindy and me some homework to see about if there's some trails, potential transportation funding that might be available at some point on this project, because maybe we could argue that this is in fact connected to a trail and is part of our trail system. So we have a little more homework there. But if you could just quickly answer those questions. I know the clock is moving forward. We've got other things to do tonight, but I am excited about moving forward here and glad we are, and thanks for your work.
Sure. I'll work with the trails and work my way backwards. The trails, the Howard E. Herman Trail that starts on Broad Street empties out about a half a block, I guess, north of this park. So it would be a connection. If you walk up the sidewalk along the school, you would end up at this park. So there is a connection. That's why the themes of the arches was kind of important to everyone, because you have an arch at entering Howard E. Herman, and you'll have a arch, a tree-looking arch at the park.
Okay.
So there is a connection of the trails.
Okay.
The trees, yes. The answer to your question is these are all native trees. They're all native to this area, to this particular area. The arborists were very excited about getting these trees planted and using the fruit as a community collective place. And the blueberries, they were very excited to use those too, because people like to pick blueberries. And the idea is that we didn't want to have a fruit-bearing tree that people will ignore. If you have too many apples, they end up on the floor and on the ground, and they attract bees and they go rotten. We figured, or they figured, that these fruits will be harvested by the folk, and we won't have that maintenance issue of having to pick up the dead or the rotting fruit underneath the tree. So we thought about your idea of what we could plant there, and these were easy maintenance, and they would be growable around here. As far as the sidewalk is concerned, Oak Street needs to be upgraded because it needs an ADA path around it. There's only 2 feet of access from the telephone pole to there's a little wall, retaining wall, so we need to fix that along Oak. But the sidewalk along Parker is a city site development requirement. If anybody is going to develop that or that parcel there, they need to meet the site development requirements, and that is the sidewalk, and it has to be ADA accessible with the ADA crossings. Plus, we have a policy now of adjoining missing links. Originally, we were looking at the sidewalk between, just doing the sidewalk in front of the park, but the Planning Commission reminded us that there's a missing link between the part where the park ends and where Timothy Street is, and so we had to add that to the program.
Thank you for this. I have a few comments. So this is actually in my neighborhood, and I walk past this park probably about 3 times a day. So I'm very familiar with the corner, especially for years when I walked my kids to Oak Street. So in general, I love the design and the balancing of all the different components between preserving nature and environment, obviously, with Oak Street Elementary across the street. So I think there's a lot of potential here. I will +1 on the maintenance costs. So while I think it sounds like it's very low and doable, and that's thoughtfully incorporating the design, I do want to make sure that we incorporate the maintenance costs in the decision making. And so when we next see this, it'd be great to know what the annual maintenance costs would be as currently designed. I understand the sidewalk does go all the way to Timber and Parker.
Timber,
Okay.
Yes.
Because it is part of the route to school, I wonder whether it would qualify for Safe Routes to School funding. Currently, we have a crossing guard that closes the intersection of Parker and Timber every morning. And so if we were to add the other sidewalk, a question I have for staff is whether we would still need a crossing guard, because now there's 2 safe passages to get to Oak Street, and whether that would be some savings on the operating side as well. So question for that. What's the lifespan of this rubberized trail? Is this similar or better than kind of a packed gravel or mulch trail like we have at Howard Herman?
Okay, the difference between the lifespan is pretty long. It's at like 20 years with minimal maintenance. What we liked about it is that as opposed to, say, bricks or pavers or even concrete, it won't buckle because of the tree roots, as it'll conform to the tree roots. So that helps a lot with the maintenance. Secondly, the gravel and the wood chip fibers. The problem with those is that once they get wet, rain, they are impervious. They are pervious, but they are not ADA accessible until they dry. So, and they wash away. So there may be more maintenance in trying to keep the trail ADA accessible than to have a surface that is permanent there. Howard E. Herman gets a dressing of stone every so often, and all play areas they have to get mulched again on a frequent basis because the mulch deteriorates.
Okay. Thank you. I guess now that we have experience, the Howard Herman Trail is about 1/3 of a mile long or so when I run on it, so it'd be good to be able to compare the costs of maintaining that trail with what's proposed here. Sure. I imagine the rubberized trail is more upfront cost, but maybe lower downstream costs. My last comment actually has to do with the pawpaws and the blueberries. So I actually have experience with both. We actually have them. My family has them. Pawpaws can be a little messy, so I would just caution against that. I know they're very popular. My blueberries, I have 8 blueberry bushes. Birds get to all of them unless I actually spend a lot of time netting them. And so while we may have high expectations that the community will be out there, I would just caution and think through that a little bit more, that we may not actually be able to harvest enough blueberries because the birds often do get to them faster than the humans can.
Yes, if you notice, it's in a very small area. we figured that the blueberries, they had to be individual bushes, and they had to be spread apart enough so that people can walk through them and pick them. So, and because of the mess, again, we sort of limited that to the smallest area at the bottom of the...
Yeah. My last comment, because I know that neighborhood had spoken to us when we first acquired the property, was around the fireflies, and there was a very special species of fireflies that live in Fellows. Do we know how this design impacts them? Because I know the neighbors are very passionate about them. And
yes. The fireflies were, that was the biggest driving issue over creating that natural preserve in the northern part of the park. When we spoke with fireflies like leaves, the fallen leaves. So with the idea that we would just let that area go and the leaves would just stay there and not be picked up, or fireflies should thrive there.
Okay. Last comment. So you mentioned pollinators, and obviously with the decline of pollinators across the region, an idea that's come up from the community is around passive beekeeping. So something that's more passive than urban agriculture per se, but something could help boost many of our gardens with having some sort of beehive or kind of passive beekeeping out there. That again is low intense, and I think would fit with kind of the passive part of the park intent.
That's a good program to start. Amateur beekeepers.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you. Hopefully we can, sorry.
Thank you for this. Just a quick question, and that is about the stage area and the picnic area. Do we envision those as being things that are rented, like the other picnic areas, or is it just sort of there? Maybe that's for Ms. Youngs.
I don't know. I don't know that we have an answer for that necessarily, but it's not, it's more of a passive park.
Okay.
So I don't know about that.
It didn't seem like a place that would be rented, but then I was thinking about other picnic shelters we have.
And it would be very small, like Alice said, the size of over at Big Chimneys, where you really only fit like 2 picnic tables under there.
Thanks.
Just to let you know, we have those scheduled to have electrical outlets, so the community could be used for whatever the community would like to have there.
Great. Well, thank you for the work on this, and I think to the extent that we can find additional sources of funding, that'll make the price tag a little more palatable for us, so.
Good.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so working backwards on council requests now. Thank you for the update on that. Do we have questions or requests for the city manager? Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I had one request from a number of citizens, and it came up multiple times on the WNOD 50th anniversary party, and that is that we've had some challenges with, since we added the four-way stop signs on the trail in the city, we've had cars actually turn on to the trail at West, at Spring, and at Oak. So my request is, and I talked to the chief about this, but to look into, do not turn right here. This is not a road, or some kind of whatever the appropriate additional signage is, because, we've had this is new stop, it seems obvious, but it's happened and been reported to me in multiple occasions. And we had that conversation on Saturday morning. People are like, oh yeah, I've seen that. So I was definitely startled to hear how many times that had been reported, and I'm hopeful that some additional signage could help there. And then also from on the bike trail side, ensuring that bicyclists also follow the request to have a four-way stop. That's the intent, is that, bikes and cars are working together to make that a safe intersection. And I guess the request is to talk about or think about what kind of enforcement we may choose to have on our segment of the trail to ensure that bikes are stopping and that our cars are not turning right. Thank you.
We'll certainly follow up on those questions and get some data on driver behavior on the trail as well, and if any additional signage is needed.
Thank you.
Other requests? Mr. Snyder?
Thanks very much. As the anniversary of 9/11 approaches, I thought it might be appropriate to just give a couple moments of thought to that. Councilmember Conley and I attended an event in remembrance at the National Memorial Park that was very meaningful, recalled to us that members of our police department, sheriffs, and volunteer fire department and career fire service all were responders to the Pentagon. And I recall being in New York City working in an emergency room treating World Trade Center patients. So I think that it's maybe something we should just take a minute to reflect on. Thank you. And then one other comment that I wanted to make. Last Wednesday's agenda meeting, we discussed briefly a note from the city attorney regarding conflict of interest. And in my view, that justifies the comments that Councilmember Flynn and I have made on the subject, even though we were harshly criticized at the time. My major interest now, however, is that we move forward, and I understand that a team of our key employees are moving forward and putting together standards and a training program for city council and boards and commissions. So I hope we'll see that implemented very, very soon. Thanks for those comments.
Other questions or requests? Okay, I have some. So a couple transportation-related ones. I think we had heard from another citizen that the Maple and Annandale light might be a little finicky and there's a skip phasing issue again. I know that we had repaired it once, but if we could look into that, given that's actually not, it was Maple and Broad, not Maple and Annandale. Given that it's in our commercial corridor, we want to make sure that's as safe as possible. The East Broad speed monitoring sign, the auto one that's facing eastbound, is broken. I think I had flagged that a while ago, and I don't think it's been repaired yet, but residents on East Broad had asked for that to be reinstated. And I know that we often provide officers to enforce out there, but I think that sign could be very effective. A while back, pre-recess, we had talked about North Oak and Lincoln, which was the site of a pedestrian and bike accident. And I think we had requested that be evaluated through the rapid response team. I would love an update on where we are with that. I know that there's probably a backlog of projects for rapid response given resources, but I think that's one in particular that we've talked about for a while because it's not a perfect T squared off intersection. So it'd be great to get an update on that. Parklets, those seem to be progressing really well. The one on South Maple, I think, is done, and the one at the corner of Annandale and Washington, I think, is making really good progress. I think last time we had talked about kicking off kind of a naming process for those parklets. And so I don't know if that starts with the Planning Commission or with Council, but I wanted to make sure that as those are wrapping up, we start that process.
Okay.
I think that's it.
So the council does have an adopted policy on the naming of facilities, and we will forward that to council, so you'll, I can't recall exactly what it is myself, so we'll refresh our memory on that process.
Somebody has to initiate. I don't know if it's us or if it's, and then we refer out to planning.
I think it's generally the city council initiates and then refers it out.
Great. And I'm going to nag a bit about this. We are now post-summer, so we'd love to talk about the sidewalk list. Thank you. Okay. Any other requests before we get on to business on the agenda? Okay.
Would the council like to get just a quick briefing on the activities coming up this weekend on Falls Church Festival?
Sure, thank you.
Let me invite Amy to do that, and it is a full weekend that is coming up.
Yes, good evening, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to tell you about Falls Church Festival. So we are going to have lots of local restaurants. We have Sweet Rice, Bad Pizza, Cafe Kindred, The Falls, Mark's Pub, Taco Rock, Open Road, Hot and Juicy Crawfish, One Taiwanese Cafe, Fava Pot, Nothing Bundt Cakes, Clarendon's Beach Shack, Harvey's, Audacious Ale Works, and Solace Outpost all participating. So there will be lots of yummy food, so please come try it all. There'll also be bounce houses, pony rides, lots of local vendors, lots of nonprofits in the city showing their community information that everyone can participate in, and lots of support. So it's a great time to come out, be with your neighbors, build community, and enjoy. So, thank you.
And will also note that at 10:15, we'll have the closing ceremonies for the 75th anniversary and also a kickoff for the Visit Falls Church tourism website. And we also have on the following day, on Sunday, the Falls Church Education Foundation will be sponsoring the Run for the Schools. That's at 8 a.m. All the notices to residents about road closures have been mailed out. And that's following the same route that I think people are accustomed to now. It's been in place for many years. So those are some of the events coming up this weekend.
Great. And if you haven't registered for the council and staff team, a gentle reminder to do that. We usually challenge the school board to a race every year and see who's got the better times.
Or participation numbers.
That counts too.
No, we don't do that. You may do that.
We vote you. At the 10:15, is at the same location, stage, kind of back by the park that we did the kickoff a year ago?
Actually, with advanced timing, we've been able to move it to the main stage, so
Main
we
stage.
will be next to the community center and the tennis courts on the main music stage. But prior to the beer garden opening up, but right there.
Okay, main stage, 10:15.
Yes.
Thank you.
And if people can arrive by 10 if you're speaking, I would appreciate it.
Great. Thank you for all the work. It's a great event every year. Okay, now business on the agenda. We have a couple of second readings. Madam Clerk, can you call the first item, please?
Yes, this is our first item on second reading, and it is a legally advertised public hearing as well. TO 24-12, ordinance to amend Chapter 22, Housing, Article 3, rent relief for low-income elderly and/or persons permanently and totally disabled of the Code of the City of Falls Church to provide rent relief for low-income elderly and/or persons permanently and totally disabled.
And we have Ripple Patel, who's joining us virtually for a quick briefing on this item that's before the council for second reading. The staff recommendation is to vote to approve this. Mr. Patel?
Thank you, everyone. Good evening. I am here tonight as Dana Jones couldn't join us. So here is the request. The staff is requesting the City Council to amend the City Code for Rent Relief Grant Program. The proposed amendment brings the program into compliance with the state code and amends the method of calculation. This program was originally established by the city in 2002. The program provides rent relief for low-income persons who are either elderly or are permanently and totally disabled, and helps them remain in the city. The program provides eligible residents a single annual grant. The amount is based on rent paid in the prior calendar year. Under the current calculation, the relief ranges between $700 and $1,700 based on the household income. The new calculation will provide 10% relief of total rent paid during the prior calendar year, up to a cap of $2,500. Fiscal impact for this grant, fiscal year 2025 budget appropriates $26,460 for the program, which fully covers the benefit changes proposed in this code amendment. I am requesting City Council to provide their approval for this amendment. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Patel. Do we have any questions or comments? I know we discussed this earlier in the summer, so it's been a while now, but. Okay, is there a motion?
Should we hold a public hearing? Did we?
We need to open the public hearing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And anyone in the audience would like to speak to this item? Okay, seeing none, we're going to close the public hearing. Thank you.
I move to adopt TO 24-12.
Second.
Ms. Connolly, the second. Madam Clerk, can you call roll, please?
Who was on the second?
Ms. Connolly.
Oh, okay, thank you. Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Ms. Shantz-Hiscott?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
Mayor Hardy.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Thank you, council.
Thank you for making these updates, Mr. Patel.
Thank you. Thank you all for your support.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. And the clerk will read the next item.
Yes. Our next item is also a legally advertised public hearing, TO 24-08, ordinance to amend the text of City Code Chapter 35, Stormwater, Article 1, Stormwater Management to meet the Virginia Erosion and Stormwater Management regulations set by the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality.
And for this, Mr. Bahailo Keeflay will give the staff report. And again, the staff recommendation is approval of this ordinance on second reading. Our staff presentation tonight will just be very brief to hit some of the 4 highlights from this code change that I think the council is now very familiar with. But for the community's benefit, so they know what we're doing. There was a council question from the last work session that we did follow up by email today, and we can speak to that as well. Mr. Keeflay.
Good evening, Mr. Shield, City Council Member, and Mayor Letty Hardy. Good evening. So as we discussed during the last 3 work session in regular meeting, the city staff is proposing 4 changes to the Stormwater Code, Chapter 35. The first one is addition of new restriction against removal of vegetation in a resource protection area. This is a state mandate, and it's mandatory to update the vegetation resource protection area. The second one is addition of a new climate change and sea level rise impact assessment for land disturbance in the RPA. This is also the state mandate is mandatory. The third one is change of treatment of single-family house, tear down and rebuild from new development to redevelopment under the water quality standard. This is the city staff recommendation because the current code is allow developer engineer to use the new development, and with the excess amount of phosphorus, DEQ disallowed us to use it. So we are not getting any benefit out of that other than developer or residents throwing extra money to buy that treatment, that phosphorus. The other reason also every year we are going through additional calculation to convert from new development to redevelopment to satisfy the MS4 requirement. So we are asking council to reconsider or change from new development to redevelopment. The fourth one city staff is proposing is to authorize staff to use local rainfall precipitation data, precipitation data model or forecast developed by or on behalf of Commonwealth. So we are proposing to have a flexibility in our code to use other curve other than NOAA, and we propose the Marisa curve, which give us more water to detain on site by stormwater management facility. It's probably 14 to 15% of the runoff from developed site will be hold on the site instead of running to the street and create flood. So with that, I would love to take any question and comment you have. In addition, we provide today additional document on the third change. So if you have any question, I would love to answer it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Keeflay. Questions or comments? I know there was a follow-up sent to us over email as well, comparing the delta between the two calculations on the phosphorus load. And it was, as I recall when I read it, it was pretty minimal. Do we have questions for staff on that? Mr. Snyder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So my question is, at its core, by making the change for tear downs, I think that's the change we're making, right? So are we shifting any costs from the developers who are making those changes to the public? In other words, are the taxpayers going to have to pick up making certain commitments that developers are now required to make?
So under the state's regulatory regime, the answer to your question is a firm no. There's no shifting of costs to the public because the states would not give us any credit for using this higher standard in any event. So those costs would remain the same. In terms of absolute terms of nutrients that are getting into the Chesapeake Bay, by having the higher standard, we captured an additional 4.9 pounds of phosphorus over the past 5 years by using that higher standard. That constitutes about 2%, just over 2% of what our required phosphorus reductions are by the year 2028. So I think there's 2 points. One, we're not going to get there on single-family home regulation in any event, and this change of standard is fairly minor in terms of meeting our overall TMDL state mandates, or TMDL reductions that are mandated by the state. Where we do make progress on that is on the larger commercial projects, and Mr. Keefley can give you more detail on that if you have questions, or on capital investments. For instance, in the past when we've daylighted streams, when we daylighted the Herman Stream Valley Park, that gave us a tremendous credit under the state's regulatory regime. So those types of investments provide a very good environmental benefit. That's a summary answer, and certainly invite Mr. Keefley if there are things I misstated or understated.
Okay, thank you.
You are right, Mr. Shield. So the amount we get from single-family house, they are small, and as you stated, for the last 5 years, if we convert from new development to redevelopment, we are only missing 2.8% out of the total requirement by 2028. So most of the requirement came from a big commercial development or the CIP project for the city. And we did 2 stream restoration back in 2016 on Core Branch and Pearson Branch. We get a significant amount of phosphorus from that stream restoration. But regarding the single family house, they are just small numbers.
Madam Mayor, just to follow up, I think the city manager answered my financial question, which is we're not shifting any cost to the taxpayers. I also like the improvements we may be making, and particularly daylighting streams, which is something I've supported a long time. So I'm glad that the impacts are so positive. Thanks a lot.
Other questions or comments? Ms. Flynn?
So I understand and I'm supportive of the changes staff are requesting for the reasons they've set forth. I just reiterate my request that when we come to CIP planning, we talk about that nutrient credit purchase, and that in light of the delta, even though it's a minimal delta as to the reduced, phosphorus loads, it's a larger delta as to reducing nitrogen loads, that we can also take up in conversation, like what other methods, you just mentioned daylighting streams, but may be available to us to do more on-site work or within city work in those areas, and sort of cost effectiveness of, certain means of achieving that versus others. Thanks.
Other questions?
I just would like to say I'm glad that we have an expert on board here because this is really complicated and things that none of the rest of us do in our day job. So I thank you for explaining it and helping us understand it better. And I'm glad that you understand it the best. So thank you.
Ditto that comment. Thank you, Mr. Keeflay. I actually had a comment more broadly about, or question more broadly about the data. So is this 108 single-family homes that were torn down, so redeveloped in the past 5 years? Or are they like smaller projects, or are these kind of what we see when we take the small starter homes and then redevelop them into the bigger homes?
So almost all of the 181 houses are tear down and rebuilt. So there is already existing house, and they tear down that small house, and they probably increase the footprint of the house and make them big houses. So probably around almost 99% of the houses are tear down and rebuilt.
So I think anecdotally, we've talked about how single-family redevelopment impacts a lot of acreage in the city. And so I did my math correctly. At a quarter acre, this is 27 acres over 5 years. I don't think we've touched nearly that much of commercial development in 5 years. And so seeing these numbers, separate from the stormwater discussion, I think is really stark. Because when we think about neighborhood flooding, I think where we have the most impacts are projects like these. So I know we're spending a lot of time talking about phosphorus loads and nutrient credits, but I think actually understanding how neighborhoods are changing and that single-family redevelopment pace that we largely can't slow down right now. 27 acres over 5 years is quite remarkable. So just wanted everyone to have that same aha moment that I did. So if there are no other questions, do I have a motion?
Can we open the public hearing?
Yes, public hearing. Thank you. That's twice now. Let's open the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to give public comment on this one? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the hearing. Okay. Is anyone online? I think I just see staff. Okay. So how about a motion then?
Move to adopt TO 24-08.
Second.
Ms. Flynn on the second. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Ms. Shawn-Siska?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
And Mayor Hardy?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Thank you, council.
That is it for second readings and public hearings. So I don't mess this up anymore tonight. Okay, well, let's move on to consent.
And we have one item on consent relating to authorization for the city manager to proceed with a contract in the amount of $300,000 with Colossal Contracting Incorporated. And this is related to the HVAC project at the community center. The council, for full disclosure, approved a larger contract for the actual HVAC work a month ago. This is for some of the interior work that will be associated with that project, in addition to that HVAC contract that was approved last month.
Does anyone have any questions on this or want to remove this from the consent agenda? I guess it's only one, so we're all just voting on this one. Is there a motion?
I move to adopt the items on the consent agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Scott on the second. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Conley?
Yes.
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Ms. Shawn-Siska?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Underhill?
Yes.
And Mayor Hardy?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
Okay. Any business not on the agenda or standing regional committee and council liaison reports? Ms. Connolly.
At the last mayor's meeting, I guess a week and a half ago, I offered to council members to have a meeting with Ms. Bawa to fully understand our fiscal policies prior to the presentation. There are at least 3 council members that weren't on council when we did those fiscal policies, so I just want to put that offer out there again to set up a meeting with Ms. Bawa so that you can dig deeply into that. And I have been in touch with her about setting up some dates when we can do that.
And we're going to have to notice it then, right?
No, individual meetings. It would not have to be noticed. It would be an individual meeting, so you can really do a deep dive into what's going on, no more than 2 council members at a time.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
If you give some dates that work for her, that would be great.
Yes, that's what we will do, so that everyone can, so when we get to the public meeting, everyone has the same background information.
And a reminder, all the policies are in the budget book, right? So we should also review the
back of the budget
policies
book.
before the meeting to kind of go in.
Well, true, yes. That would be super helpful as well. But even when you read them, some things are just a little mysterious, but good point, yes. Oh, the back reading is important.
Thank you, that's a good idea. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I just wanted to report that Chief Bard and I attended the Arlington Community Criminal Justice Board meeting last Thursday. There were roughly 30 leaders in Arlington County, and the two of us who joined to talk about, they're reconstituting this board, and they've got a resolution to reestablish this Justice Board, and that includes Falls Church City. And we have on our schedule to have this resolution, I believe it's in October, November timeframe. And there are community members, designated members, and it's to talk about the criminal justice system. Last week's meeting was regarding the unhoused population and talking about trying to do things preventatively before they get into the trial, into the courtroom or into jail, and then have a cycle of recidivism, and how it all ties into housing and shortages of beds and shortages of mental health beds for many of our most impacted residents. So it was very interesting. There are I believe five judges from Arlington Court there, representatives from the Department of Health and Human Services, sheriff, police, NAACP community member, and elected officials as well. So there's a year-long plan on strategy about how to start talking about these really difficult topics, and I'm glad that Falls Church could be included, and look forward to reporting back to you as we move through this process to reconstitute this organization.
Thank you for going to that, and also to Chief Bard for participating. Other board updates or council member comments?
Oh, I just had one additional, I guess it's not a board, it's our committees. We have 2 committee dates that we talked about changing for GovOps, our next GovOps meeting. Did we confirm that, Wyatt?
Let me send a note to council just with those dates.
Okay.
And
The GovOps meeting and then the
EDC meeting.
next EDC meeting, just to confirm when we'll have that. And the next GovOps meeting discussion is surrounding website for those who are interested, and all are welcome to join.
May I be CC'd on that as well?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, well, I think, sorry, you have more?
I'm sorry, I'm looking back at my notes. I'm like, oh, I forgot that one. I just wanted to extend my thanks to Kurt Lawrence and the ESC for the demonstration on Saturday at the Cherry Hill Farmhouse, talking about the 5 different ways in which they've improved the energy efficiency of Cherry Hill Farmhouse and how those each can be applied to our own homes. And I think there were maybe roughly 40 or some folks. There was a student rep who was touring, members of ESC who were touring, people who were interested in coming through. It was really well done. So kudos to Kurt and the ESC for pulling that together as a great community information session. So thank you.
Great. Well, while we're on thanks, the WNOD 50th anniversary, we've been celebrating lots of anniversaries, and so it was a nice event, so thank you to Nova Parks and staff for collaborating on it. It was really good turnout. And then also to the small Falls Church police team that ran the 5K with me to commemorate 9/11 in Arlington on Sunday. So that was really a special event to be able to be a part of. It was my first race there. It's like 1,500 people, and people in like full uniforms are running and running with flags. It was really inspiring. So thanks to the chief for getting his team out there too.
Mary Beth, do you want to comment on Barbara's comments at the WNOD? The woman who's essentially the initiator of the entire WNOD was in 1968, I believe, was when she started the idea. When the railroad closed down, she had the idea to turn it into a rails to trails. And she turns 87 this week and gave the main keynote at the WNOD event on Saturday and was absolutely inspiring and really fantastic and demonstrated what one incredibly dedicated community member could do. And to think that there are over 3 million people on the trails each and every year is really quite incredible. And Mary Beth I had asked her if we could share her comments. So hopefully we can either add them as a note to our city website on the history section or have them at the history room at Falls Church City or maybe even print them in the newspaper. They were really great, and I think it's important for people to see that and be inspired by how much one person can really do. So thank you.
That's a great idea.
Her name is Barbara Hildreth. So impressive.
Okay, moving on to minutes. We have a whole batch of minutes.
I move to approve the June 28, 2021 minutes. Do we have to do them all individually, right?
No, I don't think so.
Then I move to approve all the minutes as presented, with the small editorial changes provided to the clerk.
A second.
Thank you for taking on that responsibility. I think it was Ms. Scott on the second.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any noes? The ayes have it. Minutes are approved.
And Madam Mayor, the final cleanup from 2021 will happen at the next meeting. We finally got through the COVID era. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Any other business? Otherwise, we're going to adjourn before 10 o'clock. That's terrific. Okay, we are adjourned. Good night.
Thank you, council.
Yeah.
One for